The Desert Casino in Las Vegas was bustling on a Saturday evening in July 1968. Wealthy gamblers filled the gaming floor, while celebrities gathered in the lounge and performance venue. Dean Martin was preparing backstage for his 11 o'clock performance. What should have been an ordinary show, one of many the entertainer performed in the city each year, became anything but ordinary the moment Vinnie Morello, a Chicago mob boss with significant Midwest connections, settled into the front row. Morello wielded considerable power. His influence extended across labor unions, illegal gambling operations, and seemingly legitimate enterprises ranging from dining establishments to construction firms. He had come to Las Vegas on official business, conversations that required face-to-face meetings with individuals who operated outside public view. Yet Morello also enjoyed being noticed. He appreciated when people understood he was present, and he relished the prestige that accompanied occupying prime seating at the Strip's most popular entertainment venue. Martin recognized Morello immediately, as did everyone working in Vegas. Survival in that city demanded knowing who controlled which aspect of the underworld, whose interests to protect, whose favorite court, and whom to fear. Nevertheless, Martin had consistently maintained professional boundaries with organized crime figures. He performed in their establishments and accepted their money, but he avoided personal relationships with them, declined to accept favors from them, and deliberately stayed clear of obligations to them. While Sinatra had complicated ties to these individuals and Davis occasionally borrowed from them, Martin preserved his independence and professionalism until this particular evening. Martin's brother had passed away 3 years earlier in 1965. Gugglemoe, 7 years Martin Sr., suffered a fatal heart attack at 56. Martin kept his grief private, though the entertainment world's information network ensured that people eventually learned about significant personal losses. Martin had disclosed little publicly. Those with connections, however, noticed and remembered such details. As Martin was completing his pre-show preparation, someone knocked on his dressing room door. A man in an expensive suit entered, one of Morello's subordinates. "Mr. Morello would like to greet you before your performance," the associate announced. Martin politely declined, indicating he was concentrating and would meet with Morello afterward if desired. The associate replied, "He's already seated front row. He prefers speaking now." This wasn't truly a request. Martin understood the implication. When individuals like Morello summoned someone through intermediaries, one either complied or created a dangerous enemy. Martin stood and gave himself 5 minutes. He followed the associate through the backstage corridors, past the curtain dividing the preparation area from the showroom floor. Morello stood near the entrance, a cigar in his mouth, flanked by 4 intimidating-looking men whose expressions suggested they would respond violently to the slightest provocation. When he spotted Martin, Morello's voice boomed across the space. "Dean Martin, Vegas royalty. I wanted to pay my respects before your show." Martin shook his hand, noticing Morello's excessively firm grip, the grasp of someone compelled to demonstrate dominance. "Mr. Morello." "Pleasure to see you," Martin responded. Morello insisted on being addressed by his first name, noting their shared Italian heritage and similar humble origins. He mentioned hearing that Martin's performance was outstanding and that he and his associates were looking forward to witnessing it. After drawing on his cigar, Morello commented that he remembered Martin's family from their earlier years in Steubenville. He recalled that Martin's father operated a barbershop, which his own uncle frequently patronized. He described Martin's father as industrious and principled, a hard-working immigrant embodying traditional values. Then Morello inquired about Martin's older sibling. "What was your brother's name?" he asked. Martin replied that family members had called him Bill, though his official name was longer. Morello acknowledged that he had heard Bill had died several years prior from cardiac failure. His expression shifted to what seemed like sympathy, though his eyes betrayed calculation. "That's difficult," Morello said. "Losing loved ones is devastating." He asked Martin's brother's age at death. Martin responded vaguely that Bill was in his 50s. Morello corrected him, stating it was 56, too young in his estimation. Then Morello offered his theory about what caused Bill's death. He suggested stress had been the culprit. Specifically, the psychological burden of struggling to match his more celebrated younger brother's achievements. This kind of burden, Morello explained, could literally damage a person's heart, causing it to stop functioning. He elaborated on his theory, suggesting Bill had worked an ordinary position, probably wondering why he lacked talent, questioning why fortune had favored Martin instead. Martin froze. Morello continued, either oblivious to or indifferent about Martin's reaction. He proposed that resentment and envy, eating away at Bill's heart, had ultimately killed him. One of Morello's associates chuckled at this assessment. The others remained silent, observing. Martin met Morello's gaze. "Really?" he asked quietly. He looked directly at Morello, and something in Martin's expression caused Morello's smile to falter momentarily. Martin spoke calmly but with unmistakable firmness. "That was awful. What you said was genuinely awful." Morello persisted, claiming he was simply being truthful and that this explanation was probably accurate. Martin disagreed sharply. "No, you're being deliberately hurtful. There's a distinction." Morello's smile hardened. Martin continued, his voice steady. "You're publicly mocking my deceased brother, offering explanations for his death involving jealousy and resentment, when you never knew him, never encountered him, and have absolutely no understanding of his character." Martin's frustration mounted. "I'm asking you to cease right now." The hallway became absolutely silent. Morello's subordinates tensed noticeably. No one demanded anything from Vinnie Morello. Morello's complexion reddened with anger. "You possess considerable audacity, Martin. Do you comprehend who I am?" Martin replied that he understood precisely. Morello warned that Martin didn't speak to him in such a manner. Martin responded that he would communicate however necessary when someone insulted his deceased brother's memory. Morello stepped forward until they stood face to face. Martin detected the aroma of cigar smoke and witnessed a fury in Morello's expression. Morello then delivered the cruelest possible statement. "Your brother was nobody. He was insignificant. He died insignificant. The sole reason anyone acknowledges his existence is because of you. Even that didn't help him. He still died destitute and forgotten." Martin's hands formed tight fists. His instinct screamed at him to attack, to deliver a punch, to inflict pain. Yet Martin remained completely motionless. His expression stayed serene, and when he spoke, his voice was even quieter than previously. "I'm offering you an opportunity at this very moment," Martin said. "An opportunity to apologize, to retract your words, to demonstrate even minimal decency." Morello scoffed. "I apologize to nobody," he declared. Martin replied, "I understand that. However, you will tonight, or you'll experience regret." Morello laughed. "Regret? What could you possibly do to me? You're merely a performer, an entertainer. Surely you don't imagine threatening me." Martin explained calmly that he wasn't threatening anything. Rather, he was making a guarantee. Should Morello decline to apologize within roughly 30 seconds, Martin would walk onto that stage and inform the 300 people in the showroom exactly what Morello had stated. Martin would identify Morello as a Chicago mob boss who had mocked Martin's deceased brother, had suggested jealousy caused his death, and had degraded his memory. Morello responded dismissively that nobody would care about such information. Martin disagreed, asserting that he would make them care. He would describe the kind of individual who ridicules someone's departed family member, then identify Morello's location in the room, and direct everyone's attention to him, so they could see his face clearly. Morello's expression hardened. "You wouldn't have the courage," he stated. Martin replied simply, "Test that assumption. You have approximately 30 seconds. Morello threatened that such action would create a formidable enemy. Martin responded that Morello was already his enemy. The genuine question was whether Morello possessed sufficient intelligence to rectify the situation. They maintained eye contact. The associates exchanged nervous glances. This scenario deviated significantly from typical Morello interactions. Nobody challenged him. Nobody reciprocated his intimidation. Nobody tested his resolve. Finally, Morello spoke, his voice strained and forced. "I express regret for my comments regarding your brother." Martin made a simple demand. "Pronounce his name." Morello asked what he meant. Martin clarified. His actual name, not your brother. His true identity. Morello's jaw muscles tightened. "I express regret for my comments regarding Bill." Martin responded. Additionally, what you stated was incorrect. Morello admitted. What I stated was incorrect. Martin acknowledged this with a nod, then issued final instructions. Morello would remain seated throughout the performance. Watch Martin show attentively, and maintain complete silence. No commentary, no humor, no disrespect. Can you manage that? Martin asked. Morello objected that he could do anything he wanted. Martin pressed. Can you manage that? His tone, though quiet, carried such weight that Morello acquiesced. Fine. I will conduct myself appropriately. Morello conceded. Martin nodded. Appreciate it. Have an enjoyable evening. Martin then walked away toward his dressing room. Behind him, he could hear Morello's companions speaking in hushed tones, their attention focused on his retreating form. Once in his dressing room, Martin's hands trembled, not from fear, but from controlled fury. His stage manager knocked and entered, informing him he had 5 minutes. Martin inhaled deeply, then exhaled slowly, consciously suppressing his anger and locking inside. He had 300 people anticipating entertainment. He couldn't bring his emotional turmoil onto that stage. Martin walked to the stage entrance, heard the band's opening music, heard the announcer introducing him. The curtain parted. The spotlight illuminated him, and Martin walked out with a smile plastered across his face as if nothing had transpired. During the following 90 minutes, Martin delivered a flawless performance. Every song was executed perfectly. Every joke provoked genuine laughter. Every audience member felt charmed. Everyone except Morello, who sat rigidly in the front row with his arms folded, his expression stone-like, looking as if he fantasized about violence. Martin observed but deliberately avoided acknowledging Morello. He maintained his distance, declined to establish eye contact, and refused to grant Morello the satisfaction of knowing his composure had been compromised. After the performance concluded, Martin retreated to his dressing room. His manager was waiting and delivered unwelcome news. Morello was spreading word throughout the casino that Martin had acted disrespectfully, had threatened him. The associated crew was amplifying the narrative. Circumstances could deteriorate rapidly. Martin poured himself a drink. Allow matters to become difficult. That's irrelevant to me, he stated flatly. His manager protested that Morello represented serious danger. Martin interrupted him firmly. I accomplished exactly what I intended. He ridiculed Bill, my sibling. That's absolutely unacceptable, regardless of who perpetrated it. He continued, no qualifications, no exceptions. I won't apologize. I won't retreat. If Morello seeks conflict, he can have conflict. However, I will not permit anyone to demean my sibling's memory, under any circumstance. For any individual. The manager departed, shaking his head in disappointment. Martin sat by himself, contemplating Bill. Bill had been 7 years his senior, and had assumed responsibility for Martin during their childhood. He had instructed Martin in boxing, self-defense, and principles of manhood. Bill had labored in steel mills, living an unremarkable existence without celebrity or wealth, simply consistent employment and a devoted family. When Martin pursued entertainment, Bill expressed genuine delight, never exhibiting jealousy or resentment, only happiness for his younger sibling. They maintained closeness throughout their lives. Martin had provided financial assistance when feasible, financed quality education for Bill's offspring, and participated in family occasions whenever his schedule accommodated it. When Bill succumbed to his fatal cardiac episode, Martin experienced devastation that surpassed anything he'd previously endured. He wept with an intensity unusual for him in adulthood, and carried permanent emotional scarring from the loss. Consequently, when Morello fabricated narratives about Bill's jealousy and suggested stress from Martin's prominence had triggered Bill's death, it constituted perhaps the most offensive statement conceivable. If you value Dean Martin's narratives, please like and subscribe. The subsequent morning, Frank Sinatra telephoned. Dean, what transpired last evening? Who informed you? The entire Vegas community is discussing your confrontation with Vinnie Morello. Have you lost your rational faculties? Martin explained that Morello had ridiculed Bill. Sinatra went quiet momentarily, then verified whether this concerned Martin's departed sibling. Martin confirmed this and recounted Morello's statements in detail. The jealousy commentary, the assertions about Bill's death resulting from resentment, the contemptuous delivery. Sinatra's response was fierce. That despicable son of... I genuinely would have murdered him, he declared. Martin acknowledged contemplating violence. Sinatra continued, yet you merely compelled him to apologize. Martin responded affirmatively. Sinatra noted that perhaps this constituted a worse outcome for Morello than physical violence would have been. Morello almost never apologized to anybody. By extracting an apology delivered in front of subordinates, Martin had diminished Morello's status. He would harbor resentment. Martin indicated indifference regarding Morello's feelings. Sinatra cautioned that Martin needed vigilance. Morello represented a formidable threat when provoked. Martin countered that he had deliberately confronted Morello because Morello deserved such confrontation. Sinatra suggested he would initiate conversations to defuse tensions. Martin insisted this was unnecessary. He had no interest in de-escalation. He wanted Morello to comprehend that consequences existed for discussing people's families, for desecrating the dead, for believing authority justified cruelty. 2 days afterward, a visitor arrived at Martin's residence, an unfamiliar man, impeccably dressed and polite, but unmistakably connected to organized crime. Mr. Martin, I'm Anthony Cerno, representing interests from New York. I'm here concerning the circumstances between yourself and Mr. Morello, he announced. Martin declined to invite him inside, remaining in the doorway. What circumstances? He questioned. Cerno detailed the deserting confrontation, the exchanged words, the extracted apology. Martin objected to the terminology. Extracted? I solicited an apology. He provided one. That concludes the matter. Cerno explained that Morello perceived coercion, that Martin had threatened him with public humiliation contingent upon compliance. Martin clarified that he had presented an alternative. Morello had opted for apology over embarrassment. That's not coercion. That's accountability, Martin stated. Cerno smiled slightly and acknowledged comprehending Martin's perspective. He personally believed Morello had acted improperly. His statement about Bill had been disrespectful and wrong. However, Cerno continued, Martin required understanding something fundamental. Individuals like Morello simply don't apologize. When they do, consequences follow. They appear diminished. Others perceive them as vulnerable to manipulation. That becomes your concern when Morello determines to punish you for degrading him, Cerno cautioned. Martin asked if this constituted a threat. Cerno characterized it as forewarning from parties preferring non-escalation. Parties desiring to prevent injury resulting from matters that ought to have remained private. Martin clarified that privacy had been violated when Morello introduced the topic in front of witnesses, had made disparaging remarks in a semi-public area where others could overhear. He made matters public. I merely responded. Martin explained. Cerno requested that Martin release the grievance, acknowledge Morello's apology, and proceed forward, allowing ancient history to remain buried. Martin reflected momentarily. I will release this under one circumstance, he stated. What would that be? Cerno inquired. Morello never discusses my sibling, never references my relatives, never ridicules individuals I have lost. Should he accomplish that, we're genuinely finished, Martin specified. Cerno acknowledged this and said he would communicate Martin's requirements. Nevertheless, Cerno needed reciprocation. Martin could never recount this story, never discuss Morello's statements, never disseminate the narrative, because doing so would precipitate serious complications requiring serious intervention. Martin asked if this represented intimidation. Cerno explained this was clarifying reality. Martin had embarrassed a potent individual. That individual would permit resolution if Martin would as well. Nevertheless, continuing provocation would ultimately result in repercussions. Martin stood silently for extended moments, eventually nodding. He would remain silent. However, should Morello approach him again, should Morello utter anything concerning Bill or Martin's family, restrictions would disappear. Cerno acknowledged Martin's reasonableness and departed. Martin leaned against his door, comprehending the situation's gravity. He had confronted a mob boss, extracted an apology, and now the organization was transmitting peace negotiators. This should have registered as triumph, yet Martin experienced only exhaustion. That evening, Martin's 16-year-old daughter, Dina, paid a visit. She possessed intelligence and perception. She immediately recognized something troubled him. "Father, are you well?" she inquired. Martin claimed everything was satisfactory, though his appearance contradicted this. Dina observed his tired, anxious expression. Martin drew her close, mentioning business complications requiring no concern. Dina asked whether this involved Uncle Bill. Martin pulled back, surprised. "Why would you suggest that?" Dina responded that Martin always exhibited the specific expression when contemplating Bill, simultaneous sadness and anger. Martin's vision became clouded with moisture. "Yes, this concerns Uncle Bill. I miss him as well," he confessed. Dina reflected that Bill had always treated her kindly, perpetually carrying sweets in his pocket, always making opportunities to play despite fatigue from his labor. That characterized him. Genuinely decent, caring, unselfish. Someone disrespected him. "Is that why you're distressed?" she questioned. Martin was taken aback. "How did you determine that?" Dina disclosed that her mother had mentioned that a man had made disparaging remarks and Martin had championed Uncle Bill's memory. "I'm genuinely proud of you," she declared. Martin asked if she truly meant that. "Obviously," Dina confirmed. "Uncle Bill would have been proud as well. He regularly said you possessed the greatest toughness in our family. Not physical size or volume, but authentic toughness in this location." She indicated her cardiac region. Martin embraced her again, holding lengthier this occasion. "Thank you, sweetheart. I required hearing that." During subsequent weeks, circumstances remained calm. Morello departed Vegas, returning to Chicago. Details of the confrontation circulated through organized crime circles, but remained absent from newspaper reporting. Martin persisted with performances, sustained his existence, progressed forward. Nevertheless, he never forgot Morello's statements. He never forgot the sensation of protecting Bill's memory, of defending his sibling despite Bill's inability to defend himself. 6 months had elapsed when Martin received notification that Vincent Morello had returned to Las Vegas, occupying accommodations at the Stardust and conducting business, while maintaining a deliberately reduced presence. Martin's manager informed him of this development, suggesting Martin might prefer avoiding locations where Morello operated. Martin refused such avoidance. "I'm not staying away from anywhere," he declared. His manager protested that Martin didn't require additional confrontation. Martin acknowledged he didn't desire another encounter, but neither would he hide from anyone. 2 evenings later, Martin was dining at the Stardust restaurant alongside Sammy Davis Jr. and Joey Bishop. Their conversation was relaxed and humorous, filled with storytelling and amusement. A server approached their table. "Mr. Martin, someone requests your presence." "Mr. Morello." The atmosphere shifted dramatically. Davis immediately assured Martin he possessed no obligation to comply. Martin stood and announced he would return momentarily. Martin followed the server to a private booth position at the rear. Morello sat alone, a beverage position before him. He appeared significantly older than during their previous encounter 6 months prior. His features showed fatigue, exhaustion evident in his bearing. Nevertheless, his gaze remained penetrating. "Dean, I appreciate your willingness to speak with me," Morello initiated. Martin remained standing. "What do you need, Vinny?" he asked directly. Morello responded, "To properly apologize, not because anyone compelled me, but because I genuinely desire to." Martin examined him, searching for hidden motivation. "Why?" Martin questioned. Morello reflected before responding. "Because I've spent considerable time contemplating what transpired, what I expressed, and I acknowledge I was fundamentally incorrect, profoundly incorrect. I cannot articulate precisely why I said those things. Perhaps I was attempting to assess your character. Perhaps I was simply displaying bullying behavior. Perhaps I was intoxicated by my personal authority. Irrespective of the motivation, my behavior was inexcusable." "Correct." Martin did not immediately respond. Morello continued, "I lost a sibling also, years ago. A younger brother. He was murdered during a robbery. His death devastated me profoundly. I experienced a sensation that part of my existence terminated alongside his. The sensation of an unfillable void. And when individuals said insensitive, inconsiderate things, it provoked an impulse to harm them. Morello acknowledged. He looked directly at Martin. That's presumably what you experienced when I said those statements. Genuine remorse. Authentic remorse. Martin sat down. Why are you communicating this to me? He inquired. Morello explained he had been contemplating his inheritance, what legacy he would leave. He acknowledged not desiring to be remembered as an individual who had desecrated someone's deceased sibling's memory, who had exercised cruelty without justification, who had wielded authority to inflict injury rather than render assistance. What do you envision as your desired legacy? Martin questioned. Morello responded. Someone who perpetrated errors but endeavored to rectify them. Someone able to recognize wrongdoing. Someone who retained some fundamental decency despite engaging in a profession offering no incentive for such decency. They sat in quiet contemplation. Eventually, Martin spoke. Bill represented a genuinely exceptional individual, the finest person I've encountered. He labored diligently, supported his loved ones, never requested anything, never expressed complaints. Upon my professional achievement, he communicated happiness, completely authentic happiness. Completely absent were jealousy, resentment, solely appreciation for his siblings' advancement. He sounds exceptional, Morello acknowledged. Martin continued. When you suggested he succumbed due to jealousy or stress stemming from my achievements, it wasn't simply incorrect. It contradicted everything constituting Bill's character. It represented desecration of his memory, his essence, his fundamental nature. Morello nodded comprehendingly. I comprehend. I'm not merely apologizing for my stated words, but also for compelling you to defend against statements that never should have been articulated. Martin examined Morello genuinely, truly examined him, and detected something absent previously. Authentic regret, sincere contrition. Apology acknowledged, Martin stated. Morello appeared astonished. Genuinely, he questioned. Genuinely, Martin confirmed. However, Vinny, if you ever reference my family again, I won't. Morello declared, You possess my commitment. Martin replied, Your commitment signifies something. Morello responded, It does to me, perhaps not universally, but to me personally, it absolutely signifies something. Martin stood and extended his hand. Morello grasped it firmly. Thank you, Morello expressed, for providing me a second opportunity. Martin responded, Everyone merits a second opportunity. Just avoid requiring a third. Martin returned to his companions. Davis and Bishop looked expectantly. Davis inquired, Is everything satisfactory? Martin confirmed it was. What did he require apologizing for? Genuinely? Davis pressed. Martin reflected momentarily. Yeah, I genuinely believe him, he concluded. If you appreciate narratives about how Dean Martin navigated challenging circumstances with sophistication and integrity, ensure you like and subscribe for supplementary content. Years elapsed. In 1976, Martin was performing at the MGM Grand. Following his presentation, someone conveyed that Vincent Morello had attended the performance. Martin instructed his security personnel to locate Morello and bring him backstage. Morello looked substantially older currently, increasingly gray, moving with diminished speed, though his perceptiveness remained sharp as ever. Dean! Spectacular performance. Thank you. What circumstances bring you to Vegas? He greeted. Semi-retirement. Presently I allocate more time here. Reduced time in Chicago. The seasonal cold aggravates my articulations, Martin explained. They engaged in inconsequential discussion for several minutes. Climatic conditions, transformations in Las Vegas, demolished historic structures being substituted with expanded gambling facilities. As Morello prepared to exit, he stopped. I desired mentioning something regarding what occurred in '68, he stated. Martin responded, Distant antiquity, Vinny. Morello objected slightly. Potentially. Nevertheless, it transformed me. Your actions, protecting your sibling's memory, It calls me reflecting upon my own brother, considering how I would wish someone protect his memory if someone had acted disrespectfully. I've attempted becoming superior, not flawless. I remain engaged in my profession, nevertheless with enhanced respect, with greater consciousness regarding boundary violation. You communicated that to me by refusing capitulation, by compelling me to acknowledge my transgressions. Martin acknowledged, I'm glad something advantageous resulted. Morello emphasized, something genuinely advantageous resulted. Therefore, I'm expressing gratitude for possessing the bravery to challenge me when most individuals won't, for illustrating that authority doesn't provide entitlement to cruelty, for protecting someone incapable of self-protection. Bill would have performed identically for me. I'm convinced of that, and I'm persuaded that this characteristic distinguishes you fundamentally. You originate from a place where relatives constitute priority, where faithfulness constitutes priority, where you never disregard the individuals who formed you. They shook hands. This occasion conveyed no antagonism, no pretense. Simply two individuals who had discovered reciprocal appreciation through confrontation. Vincent Morello expired in 1982. Martin was startled to get a communication in the Postal Service. It had been composed antecedent to Morello's demise, with directives to deliver it subsequent to his passing. Dean, if you're perusing this, I've passed. I wanted expressing appreciation one final instance for that evening at the Desert Inn, for challenging me, for exhibiting what authentic power resembles. It's not authority. It's not coercion. It's embodying convictions and preserving them irrespective of expense. You possess that. I didn't. Nevertheless, observing you, studying from you, it facilitated discovering some of it previously to the conclusion. Your brother Bill would feel satisfied with you, not exclusively for your professional accomplishments, but for your essential character. I'm grateful for protecting his memory. I'm grateful for instructing me regarding honorable conduct. Respectfully, Vinny. Martin meticulously folded the communication and positioned it within his workspace near additional significant correspondence. That evening, Martin retrieved a historical representation of Bill, his sibling, positioned before the paternal ancestor's barber establishment in Steubenville, displaying a grin toward the photographic apparatus. Youthful, healthful, living. I safeguarded you, Bill. Martin articulated to the representation. When somebody attempted desecrating your memory, when somebody articulated dreadful things, I championed you consistent with how you consistently champion me. I trust that as consequence. I trust you comprehend. He persisted regarding the representation for considerable duration, remembering his sibling, the individual who instructed him regarding combativeness, regarding standing firmly, regarding demonstrating toughness at important moments. Bill had departed for 17 years. Nonetheless, Martin continuously missed him, persistently experienced that unfillable void, perpetually harbored aspirations of contacting him regarding insignificant matters. Nevertheless, Bill had concluded, and everything Martin could accomplish was maintaining his memory protected, protecting his inheritance, guaranteeing society recognized him as the exceptional individual he had been. That's what Martin executed that evening at the Desert Inn. Upon Morello fabricating those narratives, upon suggesting jealousy motivated Bill's passing, Martin retained alternatives. He could have dismissed it, could have overlooked it, could have prioritized harmony over convictions. He refrained. He elevated himself. He solicited apology. He championed his sibling's memory, despite his sibling's inability to comprehend it, because that's fundamental significance of relatives. That's fundamental significance of dedication. That's fundamental significance of attachment. You champion individuals you cherish even subsequent to their expiration, particularly subsequent to their expiration. That constitutes the authentic narrative of July 1968, not regarding Martin championing a criminal organization authority, despite his accomplishment, not regarding extracting apologies from hazardous individuals, despite his success, rather regarding Martin's intensity of attachment to his sibling that no intimidation, no peril, no personal cost could prevent him from defending Bill's memory. That's attachment, uncompromising, absolute, unwavering attachment. The variety that doesn't diminish subsequent to demise. The variety persisting indefinitely. The variety generating bravery during necessity. Martin possessed that variety of attachment regarding Bill. Nothing, criminal organization authorities, apprehension, personal conservation, could compel his disregard. That constitutes the instruction of that occasion. Not regarding confronting bullies, despite being component. Not regarding embodying convictions, despite significance. Rather regarding attachment, regarding households, regarding championing individuals incapable of defending themselves. Martin's reaction to Morello startled spectators. Not regarding aggression or physical confrontation or sensationalism, rather its governance, its deliberateness, its absolute steadfastness. Martin didn't vocalize intensely, didn't menace bodily injury, didn't surrender command. He basically communicated deliberately what Morello had perpetrated incorrectly. He basically solicited apology deliberately. He basically articulated repercussions if apology neglected transpiring deliberately. Subsequently, he departed and delivered his presentation as if nothing had transpired. That's legitimate power, not the category originating from corpulence or implements or authority, rather the category originating from attachment, from conviction, from consciousness of identity and convictions. Martin comprehended his character. He constituted Bill's junior sibling. And no individual, positively no individual, could desecrate Bill without experiencing accountability. That constitutes Martin. That constitutes his fraternal character. That constitutes his inheritance. Upon Martin's expiration in 1995, his kin discovered numerous representations of Bill in his habitation, in his workspace, in his bedroom, positioned on his refrigeration unit. His offspring Dina articulated in a subsequent conversation, "My paternal figure never disengaged from experiencing Uncle Bill's decease. He perpetually experienced absence. He perpetually experienced recollection. And whenever somebody desecrated Uncle Bill's memory, my paternal figure transformed into an alternate individual, persisting serene, persisting regulated, nonetheless completely unalterable. Nothing superseded safeguarding individuals he treasured, that encompassed safeguarding their memories subsequent to departure. That constitutes Dean Martin. That constitutes his genuine essence. That characterizes his specialness, not his vocal abilities, irrespective of magnificence, not his charisma, irrespective of renown, not his prosperity, irrespective of undeniability, rather his volume of attachment, his steadfastness regarding household, his objection permitting anybody, irrespective of magnitude, to desecrate individuals he cherished. A criminal organization authority fabricated something regarding Dean Martin's deceased sibling. Martin's serene reaction startled spectators, not regarding intensity or hostility or sensationalism, rather its tranquil, absolutely uncompromising defensiveness. Martin championed Bill, obligated Morello expressing regret, and communicated what authentic power manifests as. It doesn't vocalize intensely. It doesn't menace. It doesn't forfeit command. It simply stands steadfastly, communicates conviction, necessitates consideration, and doesn't retreat irrespective of circumstance. That's Dean Martin. That's his inheritance. That's his reason individuals recount his narratives decades subsequent to his passing. Because he communicated how to treasure, how to persist loyal, how to champion individuals constituting most significance, even after departure, particularly after departure. That constitutes the instruction. That constitutes the narrative. That constitutes Dean. If you appreciated studying regarding Dean Martin's extraordinary character and his technique navigating this demanding scenario with courtesy and fortitude, ensure you like and subscribe to our channel. We communicate these authentic narratives from vintage Hollywood, demonstrating what authentic refinement and honorable conduct represent. Your patronage facilitates us persisting with communicating these extraordinary narratives.